Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call the Richmond City Council meeting of Monday, March 13th, 2023 to order. May I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Moved and second. Discussion. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few questions on item number, or part 2 of this item. That's the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief. My first question involves the life science research and development wet lab space. I read in the minutes here that that's something that's needed in the region. Do we have someone from staff who will pass this along, or the need for it to, oh, sorry, I just lost the item here. The BCIT campus, which apparently has a number of facilities under there. We got a memo about aerospace, life sciences. Is this something that council needs to inform local industry, or will staff do?
No, that's one of the reports coming from Invest Vancouver, which is basically a regional economic development initiative of Metro Vancouver. So the word, and that they have a board made up of all kinds of different business people plus some politicians. So that word would be coming out, going out to them.
Okay, so our industries will hear about that potential. Thank you. My next question is on our the following page, 22. Under the Mayor's Committee, it looked like there was a delegation from the Friends of Tilbury about LNG. I know that the City of Richmond expressed our opposition to the Tilbury LNG project. Do we have any understanding on like the whole of Metro Vancouver, where they are on the position of Delta's project then?
No, not to my knowledge. Maybe I could ask staff. Is anyone aware of what Metro Vancouver is doing on that particular issue? Mr. Irving?
Your Worship, no, I don't have that ownership. We can certainly find out and confirm that for you shortly.
Okay, thank you. My next one, briefly here. I believe these are all open committee minutes.
Right.
Do we have the rest of council who are not on any delegation to these committees? Do we have access to closed committee discussion or decisions?
That is a very dynamic topic right at this moment. I think their answer, not my answer, their answer is no. You've heard of a very high-profile situation involving a closed report coming out of Metro Vancouver, and there have been a lot of different processes as the result of that.
Okay, thank you. Final follow-up then on that. If a member who's delegate to one of those committees, if they're unable to attend, do we have an alternate councillor or staff who attend?
No, staff would not be attending for a council member. I think it's personal to the person, and it is not a matter for your alternate to go to the committee meeting.
Thank you very much.
All right, so with that, we will call the question on the minutes. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Any agenda additions and deletions?
None, Your Worship.
Well, we do have the council's strategic plan, which has been circulated, and there were a number of amendments made at the General Purposes Committee. So with that, I think we should, and that has been circulated. There's 3 small changes I would suggest, but important. So I would suggest we would adopt the agenda with that change, with the updated strategic plan. May I have that motion? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right, so now we are to be presented with a video on the banner program, the street banners.
Good evening. The city's 2023 street banner program presentation will be shared with you this evening via video, and we will be inviting all of the banner contest winners here in 2 weeks' time to unveil their banners in person with council. Without further ado, I would like to present the 2023 street banner program video.
Thank you.
Richmond's Street Banner Program is an annual event that encourages community engagement by encouraging residents of all ages and abilities to submit their creative designs. Successful designs become banners that are mounted across the city for all to enjoy. This program celebrates the places, activities, and experiences that make Richmond beautiful and unique. This year, over 550 submissions were received. The City of Richmond Street Banner Program began in 1997 with 6 simple designs and 500 printed banners. Today, over 200 unique banner designs have been printed and showcased across tens of thousands of banners, creating a rich legacy for others to build upon. An important aspect of the program is the use of retired street banners. Previous year's street banners are available for purchase at the City of Richmond Nature Park. Street banners are also upcycled into beautiful reusable banner bags. This initiative helps to support the city's circular economy goals and builds upon important environmental initiatives. A volunteer judging panel reviewed the submissions and were faced with the difficult task of selecting 20 designs as semi-finalists. 550 designs that were submitted to the Street Banner Contest will be available for viewing on the City of Richmond Street Banner Contest website. The winning banners will be installed in select areas of Richmond City Centre and major gateways and will remain on display until February of 2024. Each artist receives a full-size copy of their banner and access to the photos taken of their design. An honorarium is also awarded to each winner to acknowledge the value of their work.
When I saw this bird here, it was standing on bedrock, right? Rocks. My sister, Rose, she was the inspiration that got me. I was shy. I didn't feel like I should share my photos.
I just walked past a building and I saw that it has this amazing design on it, and I had the banner contest in mind, and it's my first year entering, and I thought this is a good moment, I'm gonna take the shot.
I realized that it reflects the new and the old Steve, so I'm hoping that when people view this, they see the connection between the old and the new.
Actually, the sunset in Richmond is my favorite scenery. Every time when I see the sunset, it's just like touching my heart.
I must have taken, I don't know, several hundred pictures before I decided this was the one. And I was just crossing my fingers that, you know, other people liked it too.
So we like to go to see people flying kites. And then at that moment, that boy holding the kite is just amazing with the colors, right? So yeah, and he captured that.
I took up painting as a stress relief to just relieve my stress. You know, it's just nice to watch the birds. I mean, the birds are already chirping now. The first magnolia that comes out, that's what I live for. It's beautiful. So,
well, I love walking along the seaside, and I love taking pictures of the sunset. And I saw an amazing view. Captured the beautiful moment of the Richmond view, especially the waterfront.
We always walking, and we have garden plot in the community garden. And those time it was beautiful golden hours. And we try to compete with my wife, who is taking more beautiful pictures.
I've lived near Steveston for quite a long time. I'd always, go for walks, Scary Point, the West Dyke Trail, and there's always fishing boats going by, and really pretty, like golden hour sunset. And spotted that fishing boat and zoomed in and took some photos.
I grew up in Richmond, and I saw how Richmond transitioned throughout the years and how it was more of a nature area. But now we also have like a really cool urban architecture buildings in the downtown core. So we were very fortunate to live in a place where we have both nature and urban areas.
Nature is so beautiful, isn't it? And I needed to be where the water is, and Steveston is ideal for me.
We want to all our environment to be strong and resilient, and why we spend a lot of time in community garden to make our environment better.
We've got lots of great stuff that's grown here. We don't have to go far, and aren't we lucky?
Yeah, it's beautiful. We're quite fortunate to have all this nature here.
I'm really appreciative of you guys being able to allow me to share my story.
Well, I would like to thank my parents, always supporting me, helped me to grow in my art process.
So I've been here for 40 plus years. So I appreciate everything that the city has, and I'm happy to contribute in any way I can. So this is a small way I feel that I can contribute to the beauty of the city.
I'm so happy that I won, and I think I'm gonna enter every year from now on. Thankful that the City of Richmond allows the people to participate and have a chance to beautify the area.
Congratulations to the winners of this year's City of Richmond Street Banner Contest.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. To any of the recipients of the awards, whether you're here local, in our council chamber, or whether you are coming in remotely, the remarks were made at the beginning by Mr. Sinclair that in 2 weeks' time, the plan is that we will invite the prize recipients to actually be here to celebrate the occasion and hopefully invite family and friends to be part of that. So thank you very much. Councillor Day, you had some question?
I did. Thank you for that video. That's absolutely fabulous. Is it possible to share this with Tourism Richmond?
Yes, most certainly, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. May I have a motion to rise, or to resolve into committee of the whole to your delegations on agenda items? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Are there any parties here tonight who wish to speak to us on items on the agenda? Anybody?
Move to rise and report.
Is it seconded? Seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Brings us to the consent agenda. Fairly short agenda tonight. Receipt of committee minutes. We have the Steveston Community Center and the library signature outdoor artwork terms of reference. Then we have the public art program for 2022 and the annual highlights and public art advisory committee 2023 work plan. Followed by the tree replacement for the YVR property on Sea Island, the City of Richmond flag policy, and the council's strategic plan 2022 to 2026. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? Moved and seconded. Any comments? Okay, we'll go to Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments on a few of the items. I am in support of everything on the consent agenda. I will have a question to staff a little bit later. First off, number 7, the Steveston Community Center Library outdoor artwork. At committee, we did find out that the cost of this would be somewhat comparable to the outdoor artwork at Minaroo Center for Active Living, which is great, as that's quite a signature piece. Also the fact that this site will likely be electrified to allow for lighting of some sort for the artwork, and some of that might be incorporated into this budget. The cost for that. On to item number 8, the public art program. I did have the comment to staff and their direction followed through to look into some art supply donation component to the advisory committee for at least between our facilities and societies that work within Richmond, so that if they are about to discard art supplies, there could be a way to receive it. I'll then just move to item number 10, which I have a question on, the City of Richmond flag policy. I did hear from some members of the community who did provide support for us to choose the option 2, which we have before us today. But the question I have to staff is, in the report it does mention 2 flags that would be in this or in the report, with more that would come through community requests through council. My question is about the Pride Week flag. Would that be the progressive Pride flag?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, we are currently reviewing what flag it will be, if it will be the Pride flag or the Progress Pride flag or another one at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you for that response. I know a number of neighboring communities do the 2 different ones, so and great to be looking for if there's a third option there. Thank you very much for that's all the questions I have. The last comment is on item number 11, the council strategic plan. Many around the table today, we did have important announcements that came in Richmond or in City Hall today about housing, and there are some components of the strategic plan that touch on housing, and we've made some modifications to kind of emphasize that. But I feel that that could be maybe more work to come on behalf of council to ensure that housing, when we consider items, because we always have at the top of our reports which council strategic plan pillar or element or component is related to this item. I would just ensure that we all keep that lens of housing in the forefront. And I'm also very pleased that the statement related to nurturing the natural features of Richmond and environmental sustainability is a major component of the strategic plan. So with that, I'll be in support of all those things.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Great consent agenda, a real variety of items. Number 7 is the artwork at Steveston Community Centre. So we are approving $250,000 for public art, and it'll be a sculpture on the west side of the Steveston Community Centre. At this point, there is no exact art that has been chosen, but it is in the designation that it should include the fishing industry, Indigenous history, Japanese history, and the Fraser River history. So it's going to be very exciting to see what the artists come up with. It'll be quite a challenge. Number 9 is the tree replacement for YVR. I don't need to ask staff to come up, but I would like a map showing the area that we're talking about that's been affected, because it's actually not in this report, and it would just make it clear to me the area that we're concerned about. Item number 7 is the Richmond flag policy. So we are going to have the pride flag and the reconciliation flag. That's already done. And I'm just curious from staff about, will we also at the same time fly the Canadian flag?
No, the whole idea is that the flags of state are on the North Plaza.
Yeah.
We're going to put up a temporary flagpole until the Ukrainian flag comes down on the number 3 roadside. That's where it'll be.
Perfect. So that was my question about the flagpole. I'm wondering, should we make it a temporary pole, or would it be better to have 2 flagpoles on
Well,
it?
we can always change course. Right now, it's to be temporary,
Yeah.
but we can see how it works.
Maybe we can revisit that at a later date. Number 11 is the council strategic plan for 2022 to 2026. So what's on the website is not correct. We did amend it in the General Purposes Committee meeting. So when it comes to housing, instead of encourage and enhance affordability, we're going to make that a prioritize affordability. It's one word, but it says a lot. And then also further down in that section, to work collaboratively, Councillor Au suggested, and proactively to attract and retain business and support a diversified economic base. And then Councillor Galander suggested that rather than just have responsible financial management, we should have and governance, because those two should go hand in hand. So the minutes of this meeting will have the correct wording of that plan. And that's it for me. Thank you very much, Mayor Brody.
Okay, so with that, we're going to call the question on the consent agenda. Just hang on a sec. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And we have the one item on which has been taken off the consent agenda, which is the matter coming from Finance Committee, the amendment to the development cost charges imposition bylaw. The Finance Committee recommendation is that the imposition bylaw, which is mentioned in the agenda, be given first, second, and third reading, and I would so move.
Second.
So for the members of the public who aren't aware of what development cost charges are, for certain types of construction, when we have growth, mostly for parks, for roads, there's other kinds of DCCs for, TransLink has some, Metro Vancouver has some. In any case, they are the actual construction costs that made on certain assumptions looking into the future. So what are our park requirements going to be, as an example? So we collect a certain levy from each new unit, and that is a development cost charge. So every few years, we update our schedule of development cost charges, and this is the latest update. If we don't update it, if we don't keep it current, then we're not going to have the money that is required in the future for those, basically the growth to pay for growth. So, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I voted against this at committee, and I'm going to vote against it today. We're going through tough economic times right now. We know that the U.S. Bank just failed last week. We know that there's a huge project at 3 in Alderbridge that's a huge hole in the ground and has been frozen in time because they're financing issues. We also know that costs are escalating and it's hard to get projects done. Council itself has put the lawn bowling project on hold due to cost escalations. Council's asked for more clarity on the Steveston Highway multi-use path, because several people in council have recommended that we either halt or change the project because of the escalation in costs. It's getting more and more expensive to build things right now. If we're having trouble, imagine what a 40 to 99% increase in the DCCs over the next 2 years is going to do to some of these other projects. We're going to see projects not be financially viable over the next couple of years until prices go up enough to then absorb those new rates, plus the carrying costs of those rates. So what's going to happen is we're going to see projects like Lansdowne just grind to a halt, nothing get built over the next few years. We just passed our strategic plan. We said that housing is important to us. We're not going to get much housing out of this if we start jacking up those rates up 50% over the next 2 years. I suggest that we hold off on this and reevaluate in 2 years. I understand that we have growing costs, we have escalating costs, and the way that we're trying to charge these to new developments suggests that everyone who already has a home has paid into the system enough, into the parks, into the trees, into the community centers, into everything else. And so we're just hitting the newcomers, the new people buying a new thing. I think we need to be very careful about this. We're just layering on costs. We're not making it affordable. We already know too that almost all the affordable housing projects, they regularly ask for the DCCs to be waived in order for the numbers to work and to make the projects financially viable. I'm talking to people in Vancouver where they're trying to build affordable housing complexes. They have money from other orders of government. They even own the land themselves and they still can't make it pay for just for the affordable housing. What we're doing here by layering on these costs right now, during this time of financial turmoil for a lot of people. This is just going to layer on costs, and it's going to make sure that nothing new gets built in Richmond. So I'm going to vote against it.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I absolutely support increasing the DCC costs because they are critical to the infrastructure. And on page CNCL 86, it states that the DCCs are monies that municipalities collect from developers to offset a portion of capital costs related to services incurred by the municipality as a direct result of the new developments. So you notice the word offset. They're not actually paying the full meal deal, but they are paying a portion. The DCCs are a fraction of the cost of building a new development. So while we are increasing them, and quite a bit to be honest, it's necessary because that's just the cost of doing business. I don't think Mr. and Mrs. Smith living on a little road in the middle of Richmond should have to pay for upgrading the sewers, lighting, everything that is required for a brand new building in city center. So I think that the DCCs are appropriate. I also feel that commercial builders have to pay their share so that the city of Richmond can choose from time to time to waive DCC costs to nonprofits such as a church building affordable housing. So I think this is a very prudent thing to do, and that's why I support it. Thank you very much, Mayor Brody.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'll be supporting this. I think the argument that it is going to put things out of reach for people, obviously, it's a bare minimum, to be quite frank with you, to put in various amenities that everybody wants to enjoy. As it was mentioned, it's in fact only a portion of what is required to provide the same services that everybody gets in other areas in Richmond. And those taxpayers that have had those services in have already paid the DCCs when they bought their homes, whatever they were. And yes, it looks on paper like when you provide new amenities and a new development, there are problems. Yes, it's going to go up. But if we do not charge them, that means the average taxpayer in Richmond is going to have to pay for them. And how do you provide a park for somebody in an area where you're putting a new development in, or green space, or whatever, a walking path or trail, should the rest of Richmond have to be paid for so you can enjoy yours? Because I don't have that in my backyard, okay, and in my area. So that I think it's one of those things. Yes, it will affect the housing affordability. But I still believe, though, that there are enough incentives for development to continue. If you notice on our page 88, the recoverable value was $1.22 billion in 2017, and now it's $1.87 billion. Who's going to pay the difference if we don't charge the DCCs? And obviously, I think they're spread around. And when I look at our rates, and I think we did, staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our rates are competitive, fair within Metro Vancouver. They're not at the top of the list or the top of the scale and that. And the one thing, too, we put in on this, and I think it's something that I'm pushing and everybody else hopefully is pushing, is we have a new diking component. That wasn't in the DCCs before. Okay, that's new. Hopefully we can speed up our diking around the island, Your Worship, on our plan that we've got. So when I look at it, each one of them, I think those that are mathematicians, percentages always tilt really what the truth is. You need to look at the absolute value of the cost that's going up. And in some cases, a single family is going to go up $60,000. Yes, it looks like it's 46%. Wow, it's a big number. But the actual amount, and if you look on page 88, we have the actual amounts all the way through. And I'm not trying to justify it, make it any easier. It doesn't cut down affordability or bring it down, but it's something we want to, because people are asking for amenities. They're asking for a place to live with all the amenities. And I'm not talking about the basic water, sewer, et cetera. They want all the other stuff that just like we passed on the consent agenda, Your Worship. So I'll be supporting that. Councillor Gillanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm also going to be supporting it. I was at the Richmond Advisory Committee to the Economic Advisory Committee when this was first presented for feedback, and there wasn't a huge upswelling of concern over it. It was just, this is kind of what we have to do. This is the way that things are going, because things cost, a lot more to build. Speaking about roads and all those sorts of things cost more. And I think that the other municipalities will likely get up to where we are going. We're going to take this leap, and other municipalities hadn't reviewed it since 2017, 2018, and they'll do their leap. I would like to make sure that it's going to be reviewed after a couple of years and see where all the other municipalities ended up. And also, everybody that's got their permits in now or that has had a proposal in now is going to be grandfathered for the next year. So we're not going to really see the impacts of this until after next year. So we can have a look at it and see if it's slowed down any construction. But I think that it would likely incentivize more affordable housing, because people will be asking if they can get their DCCs reduced or waived to build an affordable housing project instead. So I think that that could have a very good effect. We'll have to wait and see.
Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. Originally, I was going to support this. I most likely will when the question's called. However, Councillor Liu raised something that has been with a discussion with a lot of people, and it's in regard to the delay in the process. And you've heard me in this chamber talk about the delay in the process and the fact that our people that need to build the housing, our developers here, they're not opposed to paying the extra DCC. Where they run into some financial trouble is the delay in the process, when it takes years to get their process through the system because we don't have the resources to get it through sooner versus later. That is a significant impact on their bottom line when they're paying those high interest payments to keep that property for years. That's where they're looking at the financial loss more so than the DCCs. So I think we cannot lose fact of what Councillor Liu has brought forward, and the fact that these people are the ones that we depend on to build the housing, depend on for that. But at the end of the day, we as a city need to streamline the process. I'm not saying cut corners. We need to streamline the process so people, whether they're building a residential house, whether they're building a condo development, a townhouse development, or even a tower, is done so in a more efficient manner. And I think that's when we can start to deal with some of the corporations that are having this large financial impact on their bottom line.
Councillor Au.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'm going to support the motion. I think the staff has come up with a very good report, and if you look at page CNCL 89 and 90, staff has already addressed some of the questions being raised in terms of the impact on cost of living, cost of housing, and etc. And staff also mentioned in the report that this is, they have considered the costs are reflective of the current market conditions and project information. And I just want to further comment on the CNCL 89, the tables at the bottom. Well, I think if my interpretation is correct, so the amount or the portion of DCC as reflected in the house price is actually very small. Am I correct?
Who wants to answer that?
I'll answer that. Through your worship, Councillor Al, that is correct. On CNCL 89, we just reflect give kind of a benchmark on the relative DCC to each type of house.
Yeah, good. Thank you for the confirmation. I think, if you're talking about house price, I think there's so many factors affecting the price. So even if you do away with DCC, I think from the figures being provided, it's not going to affect very much. So with that, I will support the motion.
Okay. Councillor Liu, I see your hand is still up. Is that an old hand, or did you have a further question?
I have something more to say.
No.
I have another comment to make.
No, we don't.
I have a question to staff.
Then ask a question of staff. But you know,
Okay, so
you know the rules that you speak once.
Yes. So we're about to go through an OCP amendment. Is that correct? And so there is the possibility that we may decide it's appropriate for Mrs. Smith and Mr. Smith and their single family home to build, say, a triplex there, which we would then probably consider to be a townhouse. And so if they built 3 units at 1,600 square feet apiece at 3240, doesn't that work out to $155,000 for Mr. and Mrs. Smith to then build a triplex so that their 2 kids can each live with them on the same piece of property that they've already lived on? And this would apply to Mr. and Mrs. Smith in that case. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, I think in your analogy, this is a lot that has already paid DCC. So if they already paid DCC, then additional DCC will not be applicable.
If they change the use from single family to townhouse, then it changes, right? And then they are charged on the townhouse, right? So if they're building a triplex, which would then become a townhouse, they would be hit with that 3240 a square foot. Is that correct?
Mr. Craig, do you want to help us out with that as well?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, in the scenario described, I believe the situation would be there's an existing single-family home. That home is being rezoned, redeveloped into 3 units. That being the case, there would be DCCs charged to the 2 new units. You would get credit for the existing unit that existed.
Okay, so it'd only be $100,000 to change that into a triplex for your 2 kids to come live with you in city fees.
To the chair to council, that's correct.
Okay, and then just also looking at the math, so an apartment at $34.31 per square foot, so like a small 3-bedroom, possibly family-friendly 1,000 square foot would end up with $34,310 in DCCs for that to help defray existing costs of things like parks and roads and diking and drainage, correct?
To the chair to council, that's correct.
Okay, but under the old one, it would only be $22,770. So it goes up by $10,000 right off the bat for that. So for a family trying to save up for that, that additional $10,000 built into essentially their down payment could potentially be pretty limiting for them. Thank you.
All right. I just want to make my remarks. The alternative to this, the alternative to having DCCs is that either others pay it or the taxpayers. It's just general tax revenue. There have been escalations in costs, and that's why we have to revise the DCCs. I can think back about 10 years when there was a situation where we dramatically increased the costs, and then we found that they were out of line too high, and we brought them back. We gave relief where it was appropriate. So it can happen. And the idea that the DCC, there could be difficulties in paying, obviously. It's all the cost that the development has to pay. But that, when we're talking about delay in the process, I think everybody around this table would agree that we need to improve the process to the extent we can to make sure that our process is as efficient and cost-efficient as possible. But that DCCs, I don't believe, has any real part of the delay in the process. You bring in your application probably very early on, you know exactly what the DCC payment is going to be. So I'm going to be supporting this set of bylaws. With that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? This is carried with Councillor Liu opposed. That brings us to public announcements. Reference has been made to the Bowling Green Community Activity Center, which is the lawn bowling facility. The city is now going to be proceeding with that project, but it's got to be in line within the approved budget. Staff will present preliminary designs at a future report to council. So just to take a word to explain that, the vision was that we would have a new lawn bowling center, which would be, I think it was in the neighborhood of 4,900 square feet. That was excess to the needs of the lawn bowling club. And so the excess space would be used for community purposes. And there was a very significant portion of that 4,900 square feet for that purpose. But then when we went out and we got tenders and estimates as to what it was going to cost, all of a sudden the facility had gone up by a couple $1 million. So council has approved the project to go forward with the original budget, but instead of 4,900 square feet, it's going to be around 3,100, 3,200, 3,300 square feet, with an eye that if the need is there, the investment is there in the future, then it could be increased in size. We have spring break activities. Today marks the start of spring break for Richmond schools, and we encourage parents to join their children in experiencing some of the many free and low-cost activities available across the city. Choices include crafts, music, fitness classes, dance, languages, online social gatherings, and sports. So if you want details of those kind of activities, go to the city website. Then we have something called the UROC Youth Awards. UROC stands for Richmond Outstanding Community Awards, and nominations are now open for the 2023 UROC Awards. These awards acknowledge the efforts of youth who have experienced barriers, made significant contributions to the community, as well as adults who have provided support and mentorship to youth in the community. So if you know a young person making a real difference in the city of Richmond, nominate them today by going to the city website, and nominations are going to be accepted until Monday, March the 27th. Then we have the Karha tournament. This has been a tournament, a very large one, which was supposed to be held just after we had the shutdown for COVID. So beginning Sunday, March 19th, almost 100 adult recreational hockey teams from 10 countries will be in Richmond for the Karha World Cup. Over 1,500 athletes will compete in the week-long tournament held at Richmond Olympic Oval, the Minoru Arena, and the Richmond Ice Center. Countries with teams include Finland, Kazakhstan, the United States, Australia, and of course Canada. A team from Ukraine will also take part. The Karha World Cup is a major recreational sporting event held every 4 years, and Richmond is glad to be welcoming the many athletes, the volunteers, the officials, and their families to our city. So for details on that, go to the city website or go to karhahockeyworldcup.ca. And finally, I was joined by most of the members of City Council today when Minister Hussein from the federal government, he's the Minister of Housing, came to make an announcement on funding that was being given to the city of Richmond. We were joined not only by the councillors, but by our 2 local MPs. And the announcement involved $9.1 million that is being granted to Richmond to build affordable housing. There will be many more details that will be provided to us. The housing has to be provided in a reasonably short period of time. So as I say, more information on that is to come. So with that, Mr. Clerk, bylaws for adoption?
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 3 bylaws for adoption with no noted opposition.
So moved. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on any of them? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And thank you. We are now adjourned.